Welcome to the Dangerously Divine podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Loren, entrepreneur, life coach, and your new spiritual bestie. We dive deep into all things feminine magnetism, mindset, and empowerment. Prepare to unlock your full potential and activate your feminine gifts. If you're an ambitious woman who's ready to stop playing small, step into your feminine power, and claim a life beyond your wildest dreams, then you're in the right place. So go ahead and turn up the volume. You're about to hear juicy stories, inspirational advice, and transformational tips that'll help you up-level your life and align with the divine goddess within you. More self-confidence, freedom, and abundance are all just a play away. Thank you for listening and enjoy this episode. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Dangerously Divine podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lauren Fractor, aka Lauren Holly, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, podcast creator of Dope Shit My Therapist Says, and community creator of the Ladies of Los Angeles, which I'm sure all of my local ladies have heard of. If you haven't, you're definitely going to want to check that out. But through this group, she helps women build connection with each other. And that is what today's episode is all about. We're going to be talking about finding and nurturing authentic female friendships. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lauren.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. I'm so excited to be on.
So, as I mentioned, probably one of your many accolades is this community that you have created, Ladies of LA, or as we call it, LOLA, right? That's what people say.
Yeah.
It's got the cutest acronym.
Well, it's actually funny because I didn't realize that someone one time just started saying Lola, and I'm like, yeah, Lola, but it's funny because my nickname is Lo and I'm from LA. So it's like Lo in LA, Lola.
Yeah, so that is a fantastic community. That is how Lauren and I connected. She was one of the many professionals that I had at my podcast launch party. And she was actually on a panel where we were talking about, what feminine energy is and what feminine magnetism is and how to build community and connections and empower women, which is what the podcast is all about, but also the launch party. And so I got to meet her and interact with her a little bit there. And Lauren, for those listeners who maybe aren't in LA or aren't familiar with this community, can you give a little bit of background as to how and why you started Ladies of LA and what it's grown into now?
Absolutely. So let me take you back to probably around 2017, 2018. I have always been into wellness, and the wellness community in LA is some of the best in the world. And I used to listen to a podcast called Almost 30. They're pretty well known in the wellness space, and they were based out of LA at the time, and started listening to them in 2017. And I joined their Facebook group, which was very similar to mine at the time. It was like a community-based group. And, fast forward to May of 2018, I was fresh out of a breakup, out of a couple months, and realizing that I didn't have a lot of female friends anymore in LA. A lot of my friends were spread out all over the United States, and I've always been a girl's girl. I've always valued female friendships, and I was really missing that community and that support. And I'd gone to some events with the Almost 30 group, and I realized, you know what, like, let me just reach out and see if anyone wants to get together in LA. And so I commented in their Facebook group. I'm like, hey, like, does anyone in LA want to get together and, hang out, do some wellness stuff, some tarot card pulls, etc. And a lot of people commented on that post. And I'm like, okay, now what? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to create a group. So I don't remember what I called it back in over 6 years ago, but I created a group, and a lot of the women from that community followed into mine. And we were all into wellness. We all lived in LA, and I would start hosting events. My first event was in West Hollywood at the park. 5 of us sat on blankets, pulled tarot cards, brought crystals, had a potluck, and hung out and started to connect. And, over the course of a year and a half, the group grew to about like 2,000 women. And during that time as well, like, I got connected with the Almost 30 creators, and they loved what I was doing. And they were like, we love what you're doing. Will you be our LA ambassador? Will you help us host events that are wellness based? And they were like, you know what? We actually want to make this a global thing. And so they did. And they had all these ambassadors kind of working for them and creating community in their own way, which I thought was super cool. And so fast forward to September 2020, I've met countless women already. We're all into the same type of stuff. And, they announced that we're going to close all of our we're going to close the ambassador program. Feel free to delete your group or change the name. And that's pretty common when, podcasts or platforms go into membership, which is what they are doing and are currently still doing. And I was like, well, I really worked hard to build this community. Let me change the name. And I thought about it. I've always loved alliteration. So I was like, you know what? Let's rename it to Ladies of Los Angeles. So in September of 2020, that's what I did. And because it was still during the pandemic, we had all these people moving to LA with no community, no friends in the area, and they just joined my group. And so September 2020 to now June of 2024, the group went from about 2,000 to 31,000. And I did not expect that to happen. That was not the plan. Wow. The cool thing I will say about the fact that like what I've created as a community is because it grew on its own. I almost never advertised it except for in person or merch that I made to wear around town while I was on my hot girl walks and things like that. But I never really promoted it in any other Facebook groups or anything. People just searched women's groups in LA and mine popped up, as well as a handful of others. And that is the origin story. I wanted to meet new people. And yes, I definitely have a lot of women, and I've made friends too and connections with people that, will hopefully last a lifetime.
Wow, what a beautiful story. And I had no idea that the group was created so early on, pre-COVID times.
Oh, yeah. That's why I can speak to both. I can speak to the pre-COVID meetups and the post-COVID meetups too, and how things have changed in LA and, how the pandemic affected people's desire to meet new people too.
Definitely. And that's a subject I want to get into. I want to talk about my origin to the group because I think it was a little bit similar in the sense that I had seen a TikTok of not the almost 30 girls, but the one drink in girls. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've never heard of them.
No, they started this group called like One Drink In. I don't exactly know how it got that name, but it was a podcast, and I think it was two girls in Chicago who were talking about, the lack of community that they felt after they graduated from college or high school and, were working women and felt like they didn't have as many female friends. So they started this One Drink In group in Chicago. And initially I had joined that group, I think it was about 2020. And it wasn't just Chicago based. It was everyone from all over the place. And I believe now it's expanded to like One Drink In LA and One Drink In New York. Similar to like what's that group called? Are We Dating the Same Guy? But then similarly I was like, okay, well, One Drink In is great, but these people aren't living in my same city. So like let me find groups of people in LA. And I had, typed in Facebook, Los Angeles Women's Group. And yours came up and I joined, and I'm looking at the group now if it will tell me 31,000 members. That's insane. Like so many people are after genuine connection, so many women, which is beautiful, but also like, do you find it like a little bit saddening? Like I can't help, like my heart goes out to all of those women who feel like a little bit lonely because I know I felt that way too.
Definitely. I mean, I've seen my fair share of topics and conversations covered in the group. And I think, important to note for any women who are listening who are in the LA area, what I've created and what I really love about my group is that it's a community group. It's not just a meetup group. And because of that, and because of my work as a therapist, I have chosen to allow more topics covered in the group than other groups. And I say that because what that does on the back end of things is it's more emotional labor. But I think it's worth the trade-off of having women who have nobody in this. It's the empathetic empath person in me who always gravitated towards people who felt like outsiders and wanting to bring them in.
Right.
And, if someone just moves to LA, let's say with a boyfriend, and they break up and they have nobody and they want support, right. Like I want to give them support because what I've learned is not everybody is ready to meet in real life. But the loneliness is there, and the loneliness is there for so many different people, for transplants, for non-transplants. Like I've seen it with almost everybody. And I think post-COVID, it's hard not to feel lonely at times. I just don't think our world is ever going to be what it used to be in 2019, 2018. There was a different energy with the city too, because I just remember it being more fun and more lively. And there is like a sadness to LA as well as other cities. I really don't think it's just an LA thing. But yeah, it definitely breaks my heart when people are feeling a lack of community and support.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, this just came to mind as we were talking about this, and I feel like I kind of have to share it. It might be a little bit controversial, but initially I was slightly against these groups because there was one situation that happened to me, and you have to know the context of it to understand. I had
Sure.
this best friend in college, and her and I were inseparable. We would do everything together, and we were really similar in so many ways. And I had just gotten a job out of college, and I think it was like my first or second week working there when it was her birthday. And she really wanted to go to Vegas like Thursday, Friday, Saturday for her birthday. And I was like, "Hey girl, like I really can't do this. I just started this new job. I'm so sorry. I would love to celebrate with you in other ways, or, if we could go on just the weekend, but I can't take off of 2 days when I just started this group." And that was like really the first situation that I could remember where I set clear boundaries with a friend and put my work first because this was my first job. And this friend didn't have a job and she really couldn't relate and was just upset that I couldn't go celebrate her birthday in Las Vegas. So much so that her mom actually reached out to me,
Oh my
and was
God.
like, "Hey, like, I will pay for your ticket. I will pay for the hotel. Like, please just go with my daughter because, she's always been one to make others feel special on her birthday. And now she just wants someone to do the same." And, it was really sad, but I had to stick up for myself and for my job and say, I would love to go, but unfortunately I just can't. Like, if it was a different time, then totally, but I can't. And I felt really bad that I had to say no. But I, again, was like, I would love to celebrate you in other ways on other days. And so time had passed a little bit, maybe like a week or so. And she invited me to a birthday party at her new apartment. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Like, I'm still able to celebrate my best friend. And I went to her birthday party, and it was all of these people that I had never met. And as I mentioned, me and this friend were super close. Like, I was like, how have I never met some of these people before? And I was talking to them and I was like, oh, how do you know so and so? I'm not going to say her name. And they were like, oh, I met her on the Facebook group. Like, I don't know if it was your Facebook group. It could have been another one. I met her on the Facebook group. And I was like, oh, okay. So, like, you're not actually friends with her. You don't know her. You've never met her before in your life. But she said she was hosting a birthday party and she wants people to celebrate. And now you're here. And so I felt kind of replaced in that moment, and not for a good reason, like because I couldn't come to Vegas with her because I had just started a new job. She was suddenly replacing me with all of these strangers from Facebook.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but it just popped into my mind because I think I had repressed that a little bit.
Sure.
But it did kind of show that like I was a little bit apprehensive because I didn't know necessarily if people were coming to the Facebook group with the most genuine of intentions of meeting people, or we're
Mm.
just coming like looking for something fun to do on a Saturday night. And I'm after those true, genuine connections, not after like people who are going to use me for, alcohol because it's my birthday or, just because they're bored and have nothing else to do. Um, so I guess kind of my question is, how do you navigate that in your own group, and ensure that everyone is there for the right reasons?
Yeah. Well, with the number being 31,000, it's hard for me to know who is and who isn't there. However, I've implemented a couple things. First of all, I've gotten rid of follow for follow Instagram um, posts because those are people that want followers, and they'll follow you and never engage with you and then end up deleting you. So I learned through trial and error that those just don't belong in my group. Also, because it's been around now for 6 years, I have a nice group of what I like to call community watch members. A lot of women will message me and say, Lauren, hey, I just want to mention this member because she said she was going to show up to my event and then she ghosted me, right?
Mhm.
Or and these are people I know and I can vouch for them. So there's
Right.
also that where people are actually outing women, and of course there's two sides to every story. But with the group, see, if you asked me this question 6 years ago, it might have been a different story. Because to be honest, I think a lot of the women were there for the right reasons when I first created it. But with anything, right, we see it with influencers, celebrities, when their platform grows, there's that lack of genuineness that comes with it. And I don't feel like I fall into that category as a group leader. I feel like I'm very much the same person I was, if not just a better version of myself. But with the group members, I see that more. And to be honest, like, I make my own best judgment. If I see a woman continuing to post about wanting to get together, and I'm like, you said you were going to come to 3 of my events and you didn't, I won't always approve her post. And I'll just message her and be like, hey, like, what are you talking about? You know? But I think regardless, it's the women that show up when someone posts that they are hosting something are the ones that are genuine and real. Because, and I've navigated that myself with my own hosting. So I'll get people who said 100 people were interested in my event at one point. I forgot what event it was. And like 20 came. And the 20 that came proved to me as a group leader and as a woman and as a lady in LA that, okay, you actually want to meet people and you actually want to be here because you're showing up for me, you're showing up for everybody. And those women, you know, whether they know it or not, and hopefully they listen to this episode, like, I remember them. I know the names of a lot of the women in the group, and I remember who has been at my events or other people's events and who's showing up consistently. And it's, you know, that's one of the ways that I kind of look for genuineness in the group. But it's hard when it's this big.
Right. I love that you mentioned you have that personal connection with people and also remember people, because I think sometimes too, when a group gets this big, you're like, people tend to have the assumption that like, oh, they can post whatever they want. You know, it's just being thrown out into the universe. But actually, there's people who are reading through this, like yourself or the other admins of this group, who really does have the best intentions at heart and want to see, you know, everyone succeed in finding friendships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really worked hard. We really work well, me and my 3 moderators. So there's 4 of us right now, and we work well together. And I mean, sometimes it's hard to navigate certain posts, definitely, but, you know, we want this to be community based. But what I've noticed with some other groups that other women are a part of that I am not, they just kind of, the leaders, the admins disappear, and they're not really proactive in their group, but we are. You know, I think that it's proof as far as like the community that's grown that women want to be here. For whatever reason, right? And I've kind of learned to accept the fact that not everybody wants to meet in person. And I mean, I'm at a stage in my life where I have a great community of people that I don't really need to add anyone unless I find that we have a really good connection. And, you know, I'm not in my group anymore looking for friends because I've built those friends over the last handful of years, mainly through social activities and online communities too. But for the women that, you know, are new and wanting to meet friends, you know, I hope that they follow through if they create events, because that's the one way you're going to meet those genuine people. And, you know, it's really fun to meet women in the group. I mean, you would know, creating friendships.
Yeah. So actually, my girls group came from the ladies of LA. I'm sure I'll have the host of my group come on the podcast in one of the future episodes, but she had posted there that, you know, she was going through a breakup and, you know, is in need of more supportive friends. And I think a lot of people identified with that, as so many of us women can, of having friends that like match your life stage, whether it be like, you know, everyone is single or, you know, everyone has kids or something like that. Finding people who are in a similar life stage as you, or conversely, a life stage that you want to be at, is important in just finding common ground and relating to people. But yeah, she had posted about wanting to make new friends, and her post got like 100, 200 something comments. Wow. And she actually went through each comment and, you know, hand selected the people based on her own criteria of who she thought, you know, would mesh well together, and, you know, based on likes on Facebook or photos and things like that. And she actually has curated, you know, her own group out of this. It's 10 of us. It's not large at all. But it's been 2 years now, and we still meet every week, and each person brings something new to the table. Some of the girls are married, some of them have kids, some of us are single. And we all lead each week on different topics that surround empowering women. And yeah, it's been beautiful, and it's all really because of this Ladies of LA group. So I'm I'm very thankful to you, Lauren. I've expressed that so many times, because if you're looking for it, you can truly find community in Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're a great example of what I wanted to create for other people. First starting by creating it for myself, and then kind of having other people, other members, figure out what type of events, again, like you said, life stages, hobbies, those are things that do bring people together. And it's like, for the people, like there is a subgroup that I don't run at all, but I endorse and help them with if they need anything. Board game babes. And there's a lot of women that go to different areas of LA and play board games. They're all driven by one particular interest, and they've created their own community too. And just like your group, Rachel, it's the whole goal of this is not for me to bring everyone together all the time, 24/7. It's for women to see, wow, this actually works, and being ready for it too. Which kind of goes back to the life stage. And as a therapist, I can talk about this forever, but sometimes we think we're ready, we're not really ready. But that's the beauty of a Facebook group. You can be a silent participant if you want to be, but I do encourage eventually working your way up to meeting in real life of something that interests you. And if it's not there, you bring it to the group and say, hey, this really niche thing I want to go to. Anyone else like it? And there's going to be at least one person that's interested. And then you get to create your own community through that, which is so beautiful. I love seeing that.
There's so many little Facebook Messenger groups now that came out of that also.
Yes.
Business owners. I'm in a spirituality one, and then it's broken up into area. Okay, if you're in the San Fernando Valley, or if you're in LA, or in Orange County, I think there might be some there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really and there's still so many members. There's 2,000 in each chat too, which is insane. Or give or take a couple hundred.
It's wild.
Yeah. What would you say to those women who maybe are that fly on the wall, inactive participant, just kind of looking? I know when we were at the podcast launch party, the theme of the day was just do it. And we said it so many times throughout that panel. And can you expand or elaborate on what you would say to women who maybe have been a silent member and want to take that leap of faith and go to their first event? What advice would you give them?
Well, first, I'd probably ask them, what are you afraid of? And really figuring out the fear behind it, because all of our emotions, our primary emotions, lead back to fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of whatever it may be. And so, not to project fear onto silent, viewers or watchers, but there is some type of thing holding you back from making that jump to actually attend an event, to host an event, to have a conversation in the group. Of course, I am very well aware that it is not the easiest thing, especially if you're not naturally extroverted or outgoing, to just come to an event and say, hey, I'm here. My name is Lauren. But I was not always this comfortable. I really pushed myself. And I'm glad that I did, because, wow, I wouldn't have all of this and all of these other friendships that were made through my group, as well as roommates and other business connections. I mean, it wouldn't exist if I had said I'm too scared to host an event, right? So there's so much that can happen when you open the door to making connections. And I say connections even more than friends, because it's not always that easy to make a friendship, but making a connection is very easy. Because once you meet someone, there is still that, hey, I'd love to get together, that follow through, that accountability, that back and forth to create a friendship, right? But you can make connections extremely easily, especially in LA. And I would say, first, looking inward and saying, what are you afraid of? What are you scared of? And knowing that this is a very supportive community, and there are women that would be open to even supporting and helping that person get to an event. I mean, I've also said, maybe not right at this moment because personal life is a bit chaotic, but I've said hey, if you're new, we can meet for coffee. Every event that I've hosted that I make clear that I'm hosting, I'm there. You'll know at least one person, right? By making that connection. But honestly, I would just say that, there's so much possibility behind, beyond the screen. And, it just takes a little leap of going through those emotions to get you on the other side of fear. And what you'll find is really amazing and could potentially change your life. So I say, like your Rachel, your motto for your podcast event, just do it. I agree with it. Just do it. Just do it. And I know it's hard, but what's harder is having a lack of community and feeling lonely.
Oh yeah, amen to that. I love too that you bring into the equation just the awareness, because I mean, I don't know if everyone that listens to this show is like a journal girly, but I am, and it's been something that like I've had to go through with my therapist again and again, where she's like, you don't necessarily like need to change the behavior right away, or feel shame for not changing the behavior, but just having that awareness and knowing like where that fear is coming from, like you said, will help anyone to just take that next leap of faith on their own time.
Absolutely. And I'm all for, even if journaling isn't your thing, brain dumping and, a subcategory of journaling is great too. Asking yourself questions of like, well, what will they think of me? Or what if no one joins me? And that's why, because the second one is something I always thought about after a few failures in the beginning of my group of lack of attendance. And I said, well, I'm going to plan an event that's local to my area, or one that I know I'll enjoy it all by myself. And that was my, changing my mindset and changing my perspective. So even if no one shows up, it's not a failure because I still got to go have coffee. I still got to go to that cool exhibit. And, I would definitely, I'm all for journaling and the like.
Yeah. And then if you're not also a journal girly, I love to record voice notes, and like that's my friends and I's main form of communication. But sometimes even just like recording a voice memo for myself, just because I feel like there's sometimes so much emotions living in our head, just spiraling out of control. And when we can just give it space and energy to like vocalize and verbalize it out loud, doesn't have to be to anyone per se. I think that there's also so much power in doing that also.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of voice memos as well.
So you also talked about the just going and making a connection. And that kind of leads me into my next question of what would you say are the different types of friendships or ones that you've seen throughout the group, or it doesn't necessarily have to be in relation to the group? And to give you a little bit of context, I think that first off, I'm reading this book. I'm not remembering the book name. It's in my car because I'm doing a book club with a friend. I think it's called something like Friendship Breakup or something like that. And it's all about surviving your friendship breakups and how to do that. I will look into the name of the book and I'll put it in the show notes if anyone is interested. But it talks about how as women, we're kind of taught this like romanticized view of friendship, whether it's through like shows like Sex and the City or, the friendship necklaces that we used to buy at Claire's that say like best friend forever. And there's a lot of emphasis on forever, which rarely do we ever find friends who are in our lives forever. But even as I'm navigating my own adult friendships, I'm slowly starting to see that there's levels to friendship. And so you kind of addressed it as just making a connection in the Facebook group. But what would you say are the other levels of friendship, and how do you know where to categorize people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you're right. I mean, I think there's so many reasons as to why friendships come and go. But I think when you get to be in your mid to late 20s and then into your 30s and then beyond that, you realize that friends you had when you were younger are not growing at the same rate in their journey as you are. So you outgrow them. And then there's like a whole process in that too of like, let's say you made a friend in college when you were 18 and, now you're 30, right? And you're, you've done a lot of work on yourself and you've grown and done all the things and you're in your career and you're really happy and they're still stuck in that college mindset, right? It's hard to feel aligned with them, even when there's history. So I'm very, when I work with clients on this, I very much say dump the history. The history is not important. Majority of my friends I have made in the last couple years, actually. And I think that we're meant to meet different people at different stages and ages. But as far as categorizing friends, I mean, I don't have like an actual list of it, but a connection to me is I know who you are, I know what you do. I'd say very similar to an acquaintance because you know a little bit about them. They're not a stranger to you. And then I'd say then there's friends for different, they say like friends for different reasons, different seasons, but some friends are the friends you go out with. They're always down to go to the movies, go to a concert, but you're not going to have them over to discuss your really deeply intimate details about your life. And then, there's like the all around friend that literally is there for whatever you need and is, always available or mostly available to you and you can tell them basically anything. But I think everybody in every friend group, and a group is just more than two. It doesn't have to be 20 friends. To be honest, the more people you know, the harder it is to keep up with them on a deeper level. It gets to be more surface. I know that because of my group. There's so many amazing women that I've met, and I wish I could be, close to all of them in the same way that I am with my inner circle. But I just don't have that capacity, which is hard, but, it's my truth. But I think that, if you have a few different friends, specifically girlfriends that you feel like you can talk to anyone with, I think you're going to be set for life. But, everyone, I mean, some people have a harder time getting deep with people and being vulnerable and open. So, but those friendships, they usually take a while to get comfortable. If you're diving in super deep with someone you met after a few weeks, depending on your own journeys, like that's not always the healthiest approach, but not necessarily. I think that this question is very nuanced and it depends on the type of person and where they are in their life. But I usually categorize friendships as like, connections, acquaintances, friends, and then best friends. That's kind of where I have like 3 tiers, I'd say.
Yeah. I think that's actually also how the author of this book categorizes it too. It's like a pyramid kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I love that you said, for my mom has always said friends come into your life reason, season, or lifetime kind of thing. And it is crazy because I think as women, there's so much of a stigma around having a best friend. Or not a stigma, but like there's so much emphasis placed around, oh, she's my best friend, having a best friend. And so you almost feel a sense of unworthiness or of isolation if you don't have a best friend during any moment of your life. But when you think about it, like we don't really expect to marry our high school sweethearts or like our first elementary school crush. So why are we holding on to friendships from childhood and expecting it to like be a part of our life even into adulthood? So I think you bring up a really good point of saying that, friends don't necessarily have to be your end all be all. And it's about knowing and navigating and managing your own expectations for those friendships.
Exactly. And, I think that, like I said, as you get older, your views and your values tend to change. And for me, it's like, like a handful of years ago, I'd say like before the pandemic, so like 2019, by 2019, every friend that I had in my inner circle was someone that I was like, I want you in my life, hopefully forever. I weeded out everybody else because I was at that stage where I was like, I don't have the energy to put into one-sided friendships, people who don't follow through, especially as the group grew. I was like, I could meet so many new people. I don't need this person in my life. So I think that also just evaluating like who's in your life, why are they in your life, and do they deserve space in your life right now? And that can change in a year, and that's okay. But I will say friend breakups really, they hurt. They hurt more than romantic ones, in my opinion, because you get super, super vulnerable with friends. Like, most people do, not everybody, but they know so much about your life and it hurts, and it's unavoidable to deal with friend breakups. They do happen for the majority of us, but it's also part of that journey of life, right? And you have to go through hard things to see what's on the other side. And I'm a big believer in the what's meant to be will be. And if you're forcing something and it's not working, then maybe letting it free, letting it go, and seeing what else is out there, which ties back into the idea of, the fear of not going to events and, being afraid to put yourself out there in any way. Because if you're not doing that, you're missing out on all of these amazing opportunities with people who could end up being your best friends for life. So it ties in nicely.
Yeah, I think it is important to do that little self-evaluation too, because there were so many times I've always been one of those people who's good at navigating friendships. I think uh, I've always known when it's time to say goodbye. Doesn't make it any less hard that I know it, but I've always been like, okay, I've tapped out of this friendship. But there was one specific instance, um, after COVID. I think it was like a friend that I'd met in like 2022, um, where I had just gone through a breakup. I had kind of lost all of my friends or let them go. And this person came into my life and even told me, she's like, "You're going to be my new best friend." And it felt so good in that moment to be needed and wanted, and like chosen by this person, because I did love her and I did get along with her spectacularly. Um, but as we spent more time together, I was learning that the friendship was really one-sided. And I think she wanted to be my friend because she wanted someone to talk to and someone that would listen. And that's who I was. But then she would always come to me with the same problems and really wouldn't leave space for me to talk about things that were going on in my life. And if I would talk about things, she would always tie it back to a situation of her. And it got to a point where I was like avoiding her phone calls and like dodging her texts. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like, this is not how a friendship should be. And I had to quietly step away from her. And she had reached out. And there were a few times where I was just like, hey, I don't think we should, see each other or be friends anymore. Like, it feels exhausting. And she did apologize. But I think too, what comes into play here is growth of, like you said, if you're not growing at the same pace as someone else. I just felt like I had outgrown all of the problems that she was coming to me with. And I kind of became resentful after a while, where I was like, why are you dealing with like silly boy issues that, I wouldn't make these decisions. So why are you doing it? And I almost became resentful because I was like, why are you doing this to yourself? But then you can't really hold your friends accountable to things like that because they haven't lived through the same life that you have, and they haven't gone through necessarily all of the same things. Or if they have, they've handled it in maybe unhealthy, toxic ways. So I think too, it's a measure of like self-preservation that we need to think about when we talk about female friendships, and them not being forever. And maybe you go through a friendship breakup. Maybe it's just you preserving your sense of self and your own identity.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. And truly, like, as again, I keep saying as we get older, but like it's just something that, when you enter the next decade, the next year, whatever it may be, you just have a different life than you did, let's say, again, like early 20s. Because I always think of like life was very different and carefree when I was 21, 22. And now, a decade later, I'm like, I don't have enough time for people who are not filling up my cup with good things. And I mean, it's a major topic because in my group, so many women are asking advice on friendships, female friendships, and it is constant. And there's, always a bunch of opinions, but majority of the time, a lot of the opinions line up. So, there's that support in the group for women who are struggling with knowing, is it time to end a friendship? Because ending a friendship is really hard, and ending a friendship with history is even harder. But there's no point in having people, like I say, in your orbit that are not going to benefit you in a positive way, emotionally, more than anything. Because, if every time you think of them or the idea of seeing them is exhausting or giving you anxiety like that, listen to your body too, right? It's all about being intuitive and having hard conversations, setting boundaries. Are they respected? Are they not? If they're not, think about this, do you want them in your life? Because having people in your life that are not respectful of you and making you feel good are not worth having at all. It's better without them. You just have to go through that grief process. And a lot of people avoid that. At least that's what I've seen and noticed with people that I've met or clients I've worked with. But again, it all ties back to fear and facing that fear and realizing that there's so much more on the other side of the wall. You climb over that wall, you'll get that opportunity to meet new people who could end up changing your life forever. I mean, how cool is that?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's been great. like I said, I've done it. And I've used the Facebook group for what it's meant for. Um, and I love that you brought up the point of having hard conversations, because there was a moment in my little friend group that I just spoke about where I had felt like I had outgrown some of them. And I was speaking to one of the girls that I was closest to, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if I'm going to continue to come. It's been, hard on me emotionally and it doesn't feel good." And like I said, I'm pretty good at navigating when my intuition says you're outgrowing this friendship. So that was just something that I thought was something that I'd outgrown, and I was like, it's great for what it is, and I'm going to, exit stage left. And that friend actually came back to me and was like, "I understand where you're coming from, and if you truly want to leave, I'm going to support you. But also, are you reverting to like unhealthy habits of disappearing when things get hard, as opposed to having conversations with people and expressing how you feel?" And that to me like shook my world. And
Yeah.
I was like, this person is a true friend because they're calling me out on my BS. And C, she was totally right. Like, I wasn't expressing how I felt to the group, and I wasn't giving people the benefit of the doubt or that opportunity to make it right. And she had told me in that same like voice note or whatever, she's like, "We're so quick to give like romantic partners the opportunity to fix things. And when something is wrong, we tell them and hope they change the behavior. But why do we not give that same leniency to our friends?" And I was like, wow, okay. And this was like a year ago. So now, I've been in the group for 2 years, and I'm so happy that I stayed. And happy that this one friend had given me that advice and had that hard conversation with me. So do you have any advice that you would give maybe people who are unsure if they want to break up with a friend or have outgrown a friend? Is there any advice that you would give them on having those tough conversations?
Definitely. Well, I'm glad that it worked out for you, and she's right. I mean, I think a true friend will call you out on things that need to be called out on in a nice enough way, as nice as they can be. And if you've kind of grown in your own life, you don't have to like it, but that accountability should follow, right? Where it's like, you know what, you're not wrong. Like this is something I do, and thank you for pointing it out. But I think, it's hard for anyone to really know what to do and say when there is a friendship that needs to end. But having hard conversations, just know that that's why they're called hard conversations. They're never easy because they involve a finality. And when there's a finality in life, we get scared and we run from it, and we realize, like, what would our life look like without this person? Because hard conversations can lead to finality, or they can lead to another cycle or version of your friendship. And the only way that that's going to end up happening is if both of you are aligned in where you need to be held accountable and responsible, and if you're both aligned maturity wise as well. Because a lot of times I've seen, someone have a conversation with a friend, and the other friend gets defensive and they don't apologize. But, what that tells me is that you probably just saved yourself years of this back and forth and hard emotions by just opening up that door. Because everyone is valid to how they feel at the end of the day. But, if a friendship is not moving both of you forward, I don't really see much of a reason to keep it. That's my opinion. I'm also a solution focused therapist. And I bring that up because, to me, I really try to find life solutions to push me, my clients, my friends, whoever, forward in their life to face their fear of the unknown in the future. Because, like I've said this whole episode, what are you really afraid of? What are you fearful of? That friend's no longer in your life? Well, you didn't really get along with them the last couple of years. What are you missing? You're going to miss the anxiety they gave you? No. And it's just, yeah, I would say that having hard conversations is hard, but you speak your truth and you use those I statements like they, like therapists tell you to do. And you come from real life experiences with an openness and a curiosity. And if that friend of yours isn't going to give you that back, then walk away, deal with the grief. It's hard. That's why you find a community support group, aka a Facebook group or some other group to support you during that time. Because there's a lot of women that have gone through the same thing. And we're all here on the other side in a better position than we once were. So you're not alone in doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. And then for anyone who doesn't live in LA or maybe doesn't have a Facebook group, are there any other recommendations you'd have to really make authentic friendships as a woman?
Definitely. I know that people have tried a bunch of different things, but what worked for me, and it's still LA, but it's all over, the country, is Meetup. I really like Meetup. Let me think. Two of my best friends I met through Meetup groups of women before I created my group. And yeah, I mean, we met in like basically like it was a social group on the Meetup app. So download the Meetup app and search for groups of interests or ages or whatever you want it to be. So I would start with Meetup. I would look at Facebook and just make sure that your area doesn't have a group that's similar. And then I would say join co-ed sports or other activity leagues, because it's brought me a ton of amazing people in my life. And I will always support co-ed sports leagues. And I'm not an athlete, so do it for the connections.
That's fantastic. I have a friend who just said she joined running club and she's not a runner. And I'm like,
Awesome. I love that.
Should I join? I've been playing tennis and golf with my friends and I'm waiting to get a little bit better at it before I do something like that. But yeah, I think there's so much camaraderie in sports. That's great advice.
Yes, no, it's amazing. And hopefully, yeah, you can join a tennis or golf league. But yeah, join the running club. Why not? There are running clubs too. Running clubs could be another great way to meet people. We need hobbies. As adults, we need hobbies because when we were kids, we had hobbies, right? Most of us were in dance or soccer. Why did we stop that? There's no reason to stop that.
Yeah. I mean, life gets busy, but that's not an excuse.
Yes. And let's bring it back and make sure that you have it in your routine so you feel some sense of excitement throughout your week. It can't just be work.
100% agree. Awesome, Lauren. Well, it has been fantastic talking to you. I can't believe it. I'm looking at the time. It's been 55 minutes already. So I think that we are going to go ahead and wrap up the episode here. But I'll give you the next few minutes to plug yourself or plug some links in case people want to work with you, want to join the group, or want other ways to connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. So the group is Ladies of Los Angeles. If you're in LA and you identify as a woman, you can join the group on Facebook. We also have an Instagram, ladies_of_Los Angeles. That's our Instagram. My podcast is Dope Shit My Therapist Says. You can find it on Apple and Spotify. I also have an Instagram for that if you type it in. And if you want to work with me as a therapist, I have decided I'm going to be opening up my private practice. I do not advertise on my Facebook group that I mean, they know I'm a therapist, but I never advertise therapy for like ethical reasons. But if you do want to work with me, find me. I'm currently building my private practice. That is what I'm going to be doing all next month. Find my name, Lauren Fractor, and get connected with me if you want to work with me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that, Lauren.
Thank you so much. This is a transformational year and I'm embracing it.
Yes. And side note, Lauren's getting married soon, planning a wedding. Oh, such good things in the works for you. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. This was awesome. I'm so glad we got to connect through the community, and I love what you're doing. And yeah, I'm very grateful that you had me on today.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. It's been my pleasure. Before we hop off, I know you have a little quote that you want to read to the listeners.
Yes. One of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite musical artists, the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. That is from Mr. Bob Marley. It's been one of my favorite quotes, but it really kind of plays into the episode today. Just know that, things in life that are worth having are hard, and you can do hard things, and you come out on the other side with amazing opportunities and success and love, and the world is at your fingertips if you make it through hard things. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I have a little quote similar. You can do hard things, and it's on my fridge, just reminding me all the time. It's the only magnet I have. I'm not really a magnet person, but
I love it.
It's perfect. I gotta remind myself, you can do hard things. You might not want to, but you can do it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on the show and for chatting with the listeners. For everyone who is here, I will put Lauren's link in the show note description in case you are interested in joining the group or working with her in any other ways.
Thank you.
Awesome. Until next time, I'm Rachel. Thank you so much for listening to the Dangerously Divine podcast.